Over the past century, carbon emissions in the region of Asia have been continuously increasing. According to this graph from the Asian Development Bank, there is a 5% increase in annual CO2 emissions from the years 1990 to 2010. The regions of Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam are responsible for 90% of these regional greenhouse gases. These regions are also responsible for the production of 17.74 billion metric tons of CO2 emissions in the year 2021 alone. Carbon emissions are the sole contributor to climate change, and the unpredictability of climate change, including frequent natural disasters, leaves the citizens of these countries in an ectopic state with almost nowhere to seek asylum. This begs the question, to what extent has carbon emissions impacted Southeast Asia's displaced populations within the last century? Through thorough research, it has been concluded that carbon emissions have negatively impacted displaced populations in southern and southeastern Asia over the last century. Good morning, my name is Richard Tang. According to Van Kamik, according to Leander Van Kamik, carbon dioxide emissions in the region of southern and southeastern Asia has exponentially increased since the year 1960. As seen on this graph, we can see a large increase in carbon emissions from the general region of southern and southeastern Asia, with Indonesia being notably the largest, with approximately 600 million CO2 emissions in millions metric tons from the year 1960 to 2021. While the other countries have lower rates, they still equate to a huge sum of approximately 1.8 billion metric tons of CO2. This indicates that since the year 1990, the amount of carbon dioxide in the air we breathe has nearly doubled, while also contributing to a large mass of greenhouse gases present in the atmosphere. This implies that the more greenhouse gases that are emitted, the greater the effects of climate change on rising temperatures. For example, as seen on this graph from Japan's meteorological agency, we can see that there's a close correlation between CO2 in parts per million and rising temperatures within the region of southern and southeastern Asia. On the left side of the graph, we can see that when CO2 in parts per million starts off as low, so do the temperatures within this region. But as we move to the right, over the next 4 decades, we can see that this rate gradually increases up to 0.5 degrees Celsius. But as we progress through recent years, it is clearly observed that CO2 emissions have a direct effect on temperatures within the region via greenhouse gases. And the greater the temperatures, the more unpredictable climate change becomes, while also causing more natural disasters resulting in more displaced populations. Data from Yusof Ishuk Institute illustrates these chains of events, as we can see that in the year 1960, fewer climate disasters occurred in comparison to the year 2020, with an average increase of 20 climate disasters every decade. With an average of 20 climate disasters every decade, it is only natural that the rate at which populations are displaced also increases. For example, data from the Public Health Post is illustrated here on this bar chart, where the region most impacted by climate disasters is clearly shown here in green, representing Asia, throughout the years 1994 to 2014, and a huge spike in 2002, where Asia had approximately 700 million of people affected by climate disasters. This emphasizes the disastrous effects that carbon emissions lead to. The affected populations of Asia, approximating to 700 million, also causes an increase in displaced populations as more people are affected. Furthermore, according to the Migration Data Portal, Southern and Southeast Asia experience a large amount of weather-related displacements. From the year 2012 to 2021, both regions had an approximated 20 million displaced populations in comparison to that of other regions such as Sub-Saharan Africa, the Americas, Middle East and North Africa, Europe and Central Asia, with only approximating to roughly 10 million displacements from the years 2012 to 2021. Moreover, carbon emissions are a direct cause of climate change, and climate change is a large contributor to many disasters within the region of South and Southeastern Asia, resulting in more displaced populations, essentially negatively impacting these populations. Ultimately, while the product of the Industrial Revolution, that being CO2 emissions, has negatively impacted displaced populations in Southern Southeastern Asia over the last century, it's important to reflect and learn from mistakes made in the past. A quote by Marcus Aurelius from his book, The Meditations of the Emperor: "Time is a river, a violent torrent of things coming into being." Climate change can be seen as a result of the cumulative impact of human activities over time. And much like a river, it has been gradually growing in size and speed until it becomes a violent torrent. The increasing frequency and severity of extreme weather events, and rising sea levels are all signs of the power of this river of change. In this context, it is important to recognize that we cannot simply stand by and watch this river of time change sweep us away. Only by understanding the concept of time as a river can we appreciate the interconnectedness of the natural world and the importance of taking action to protect it. We must work together to slow down this river of change and build a more sustainable future for ourselves and for future generations. This is my Works Cited page. Thank you. Any questions?
Two questions for you. Back up a little bit. What information did you need before you began your research, and then how did that information shape your research as you went along?
Information I need before I began my research was the rate at which natural disasters occurred, because the natural disasters is the cause behind displaced populations, correct? Because looking back on my presentation, I followed the line of reasoning of how increase in carbon emissions led to an increase in climate change. It led to an increase in the effects of climate change, leading into the effects of increased natural disasters, and this also increasing the rates at which populations are displaced.
Okay. And what additional questions came up as you were going through the process?
As I was going through the process, I wondered if I should have broadened my research question, because it was rather, looking back on my presentation, one of my graphs using, for example, the public health post, it used Asia as a general statistic, right? But my research question specified that of Southern and Southeastern Asia. So I was wondering throughout the research process whether I should broaden this so I could gain more research or have more research available to me, while also being able to confirm my claim being displaced populations